All right, we are recording. All right, so this is chapter 15 of The Password is Courage. A bit more happens here, even though it's technically like just the next day from the previous one. Well, it spans a fair amount. I'm just trying to remember. Yeah, it starts with Coward has some clerical duty because, I mean, they want to slow up work as much as possible, so as many POWs as possible report as being sick. It's, mystery pains that, oh yeah, just, randomly my shoulder hurts a lot. I can't really use it, so I can't work today. Even though, the arm is perfectly fine, just, trying to keep the actual work levels as low as possible, but you do have to mix it up to make sure the Germans don't get shot. If anyone is really sick, it is explained that they get sent back to Lambsdorff because while there is a German officer there that can serve as a medic, they got British doctors back at Lambsdorff, so it'd be better to send them there. But because he has to, go through all this, everyone, and you make sure, okay, so you're saying this is your problem, right? Yes, okay, good. One of them comes in, who this guy's kind of mad. Yeah. The way it's described is two things. One is that when in a POW camp for so long, it is possible for your mind to break. And this guy did, and part of how he maintains what sanity he still has, he devoted to religion, but he's still a little cockeyed with that. But anyway, he's in there, and he asks Coward, hey, next time you're in Birkenwald, which is a nearby town, could you see the eye doctor and get me, a new pair of glasses? I didn't want to say it to the former sergeant major, but I need something stronger. It's like, that guy, he was so helpful. But, it's like, so I didn't want to bother him, but now you're here, so could you do it? And I was like, yeah, sure, I can make sure of that. No problem. Yeah. And make sure to ask him for some extra polishing rags. Polishing? Okay. Yeah. He gave the previous sergeant major some already in there, underneath the floorboard there. Oh. Okay. This dude's nuts. Then eventually, it's like, fine. Pulls up, the dude comes over, and Coward is like, I don't know what's going on here. You're insane. Dude pulls up the floorboards. It's like, oh! Yeah, polishing rags. Are revolvers. There's 4 revolvers there. 2 dozen clips of ammunition, and a grenade. This guy, that the optician has gotten to them. As I've mentioned, I think I mentioned before. I mentioned before there was the optician who is the connection to the underground in the area, and he's provided these things. And Coward is like, perfect. Maybe I can find some way to get this to the Jews so they can either maybe break out and escape, or at least take some of the Germans with them, some of the Nazis with them. But the dude is like, no. This needs to be for us to kill as many Germans as possible. Well, all the unchristian Germans. Little nuts. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. It'd be really good if we get some dynamite. Dynamite? What are you talking about dynamite for? Because then we can, blow up the whole camp. Wouldn't that be wonderful? It's like, okay, you can go now. It's like, the guy's kind of nuts, but it still is. This is how Coward finds out that he does have some means to get items such as these. Exactly what he may use them for, not sure, but I don't remember what they end up using them for, or if they use them at all. They do smuggle some things in there. In fact, I do remember at one point they do in fact get dynamite, but that's much later in the book. So then, after that, he now has to go because the work parties are out there. So it's like, okay, he has to go and mind that. And I mean, it's basically a normal work detail. They don't really, the POWs don't really want to work, but eventually the Germans yell at them enough that fine, they start working. But there is one group that's proven to be a problem. And one of the, there's an Unterofficer with Coward, and he's going to be like, I'm going to get them working, okay? I'm going to take his. And Coward's like, you lay one hand on them, you're in trouble. I was like, you cannot do that. So it's like Coward's going up there, going to try to figure this out. The problem is, They're trying to order the POWs to climb a steel ladder. This is winter, though, and they don't have proper gear for that, proper gloves or boots. And one of the guys who describes this is, really gentle guy. He's like, I'm not doing it without the right gear. So he just turns and starts walking away to go back to the other detail. The Zunta officer pulls out his gun and shoots the guy. Just straight up kills him. And to be clear, this does not spark a riot. Even though you'd think that maybe it could. It doesn't. The POWs around react by going to the body, and it was like, the POW turned and saw himself being shot then, and it's described as being in the chest and just like immediately is bleeding. So it's like, even if it didn't kill him instantly, there's no way he would have survived, kind of thing. It's like that good a shot, if you will. So they all come around the body. The POWs do. No one is working anymore because everyone else comes over. The German guards eventually surround the body to keep them back. This is so that a doctor can come and pronounce him dead. It's not like, at least it's not written as though this is an aggressive thing. It is a no, we do have that process that needs to happen. So now Coward, it actually describes it in there as this is a last straw for him. That now it's like, no, I need to make sure these people are dealt with, one way or another. That no mercy for these assholes. So it takes a couple days for a coffin to eventually be made, and it's described as a rude coffin, but still it gets the job done. And then they bring him down into the nearby town to be buried in a nearby cemetery. And all that, but it is just things do not escalate from there, at least at this moment. He then has to go back to Lambsdorff. Ostensibly, it's because, I need to get, various supplies. But it was also so that he could write a letter back, and let me actually look it up. Because there's one thing, I think I know what it's saying, but I'm not sure. Let me see if I can actually find it, because I might have gotten that wrong. RSM Sheriffs. I think that's a reference. I know I'm misspelling sheriffs as well. I think what it's referring to is not Rancho Santa Margarita, but it's basically, it's. I believe he's basically referring to the British Post Office. So he is going to write a letter home to his wife, but it is care of William Orange, which some of you might not know what that is a reference to, some of you may. And he's writing something, and when she's gotten letters like this, she's like, my husband's cracked. What is he doing? Talking about flowers and birds? What is wrong with them? But it's like, wait, William Orange. Oh! WO, War Office. Sends it off to them. And this is a tactic that my understanding is many British POWs did do. Where they would send a letter home with things that seems like it's just domestic stuff. So if somebody were to read them, that's it. But care of, because he's like writing it to his wife, but care of William Orange, and it's like that's a reference to the War Office, and you'd use other names as well, so long as it was WO, that's to indicate to your loved one, yes, get it there. And then the War Office, even if they don't necessarily know what the code is, they at least know there is something here, and we'll start working on breaking the code, and will eventually succeed. So it mentions that that's how he did actually report back about the V1 bombs that he had cited. It's not clear if he then... It does describe it as, yes, these were the deadly V1 bombs. I don't know if that was he somehow learned that during this time period, or if it was later, like when the military intelligence organizations in Britain may have talked to him later and been like, yeah, that's what this was, thank you for that. Because it does mention that MI9 did say that his consistently doing this was excellent. And I assume mostly like excellent practice because he tried to use a consistent code, and this is how he sent stuff back. So he did send back saying this dude was murdered by this German officer, because potentially what this would do is, by the War Office learning that, for one thing, now they know that there's one person who's no longer a POW, but they could then also potentially get this information to other places, such as to Switzerland, in the Red Cross, who will then actually push and potentially get at least that German Unterofficer removed from Auschwitz, if not actually court-martialed. Because it was just straight up murder, basically, and that is something that, yeah, even the Nazis are not supposed to be doing, are not supposed to be allowing. Not to say they didn't, but they're not supposed to. He also does confirm that the suspected Nazi plant at Auschwitz was in fact a Nazi plant, because he was supposed to have come out of Lambsdorff, but it's like, yeah, no one by that name left here for Auschwitz alone. I mean, it's like, it would make sense if he was in a group, but no, he arrived there alone. No, he's definitely a plant. And so it describes that basically the morning after, when parade is called, so that's roll call, come out, there was, the number didn't quite come out right, and the cesspool was a little bit taller. So yeah, he got dealt with very rapidly once they knew for certain. It is also when, so the end of the previous chapter had Coward being told, hey, so you know, tomorrow morning we're expecting a consignment of Jews to come in. It did not arrive then. It arrived some days later, because this was enough for the murder, 2 days for the coffin, his trip to Lambsdorff, and trip back, because it's when he arrives back that he actually does see them. It's also worth noting, even before this, he's on the train. The guard with him just starts talking. He's like, they start having a little bit of conversation. And the guard basically is saying himself that, yeah, he's sick of the war. He wants out, that there's been enough suffering for him. Let it be done, because his home was destroyed, such that his father's dead, and his family's had to be evacuated to Dresden. So he's not happy. But there's also, he does have knowledge of what's going on with the Jews there, because Coward asks him when they pull up and see the cattle cars, a little bit about, what's going on. And I do have a long quote I will read. It's a little bit later than them just coming off the cars. Sorry. But he does also mention there how, like, you look and see these completely emaciated forms and just how horrible it is, but it's like, even without seeing them trying to walk out of the cars, you still know how bad it is, because of the bodies that have been removed and just being stacked up, waiting to eventually be burned, because the ones that died en route. So he's watching all this with the guard, and he sees them being marched down to a group of Germans. Some are officers and Gestapo, some are civilians. The reason why is because they're being divided into 3 groups. One group that's the strongest of them, or at least the strongest looking, they're being handed over to the civilians, who are farmers, who are going to put them to work around. By the way, as an aside, I do wonder how much that may have happened where they were then treated decently. I do wonder if there were many German civilians who were given slave labor, essentially, but decided not to treat them as chattel slaves. Because slavery has changed throughout history. Some of it was not as bad as chattel slavery, and this would be even a worse form than that. But still, I do wonder if there were some who were treated better by their civilian masters in that way. Or if it was the Nazis weren't going to give them over to somebody who, treated them decently. I don't know. It is just a point of curiosity. Certainly would not have been enough people. And also certainly, if they escaped, that would have probably produced more problems. And kind of like the whole Coward being the man of confidence, the British man of confidence. That if you did have a farmer that was treating the Jews, the Jews handed over to them decently, and any of them escaped, it would probably be, okay, well then we can't let any of them go to farms. They all, if they're healthy enough to work, they're going into the factory. So it's the strong ones that go into the farms. Those that describes as just being able to basically walk upright, they're destined for the factory. The rest, which would be the old men and women, as well as the young women and the children, basically. So if the women that would be walking with babies, and also little children, they would be in this last group, which are destined for the gas chambers. And that's also the group that he even says to the guard, I want to see them walking from the gate outside of the gas chambers to the gas chambers. And this path, by the way, comes to be important later. Just it's not too specifically relevant here, but it becomes significant later. And by the way, it's not an easy portion here. That's part of the reason I think it should be read. Before the building was a gate, and on reaching this the Jews were ordered to remove all their clothing. Old men with thin matchstick legs stood in the icy air, convulsed with trembling. Several women fell into the snow and were heaved up by their friends or relations. Coward saw one young girl, naked and marble white with the cold, clutching a child of a few months to her breast, while the infant attempted to extract some nourishment from her pathetic body. She led by the hand a small girl of about 5, crooning a song as she went along. The song became louder as she entered the gate of the death house. It was taken up by the others, and despite the kicks and blows aimed by the guards, swelled in volume until it assumed the last gesture of this proud race. The Jews seemed to walk strongly once more, ignoring their grotesque nakedness. They steadied themselves, the infants ceased whimpering, and in their song they became again the children of God, marching to their last Canaan. That's yeah. That march is going to become important later, as I said. Although I don't remember being mentioned later on when is important. Well, more important. If they were forced to march naked there as well, but yeah. And in the following paragraph, it has Coward reflecting on, it's not my religion, but there's still like an eternal strength and beauty to this even. That these people could still do that. Yeah, let me actually see about reading that paragraph properly. He was conscious of a feeling of pride that men and women could bear themselves to their doom with such courage. The religion was not his, to be sure, but they typified the eternal values, so elusive to define yet so overwhelmingly right when demonstrated in the face of unimaginable disaster. It's a very good book. Should be read. And there is still plenty more to come. Not necessarily matching what I just read. Some that may come near, but things start working together, like the whole connection to the underground, the dynamite I mentioned, and some other things to finally start satisfying his desire to do something to help the Jews. That will start happening. I don't remember when. It shouldn't be too long, I think. But there's probably another number of pieces on the board to still get in play before that. Excuse me. But yeah. All right. See you next time.